I knew something had shifted the moment my son said, "Just let me do the introductions tonight, okay?" He said it in the car, not looking at me, watching the road instead. His knuckles relaxed on the wheel like it was a casual thing to ask, like it meant nothing. I nodded and looked out the window at the Austin skyline, orange and gold in the evening light, and told myself I was tired from the flight. I had been in the air since 6 that morning, Knoxville to Charlotte, Charlotte to Austin. My knees ached the way they always do when I've been sitting too long. I had my good blazer on, the navy one I wore to church and to school board meetings, and I'd done my hair. I wanted to look right for the occasion. My son was opening a restaurant. A real one, farm to table, locally sourced, 42 seats, a wood-fired oven imported from Portugal. It had been his dream since his early 20s, and I had helped make it real. $175,000. Every bond I'd held since my husband passed. The money from selling his truck, his woodworking tools, the small camper we'd bought for the retirement trip we never took. I had wired it without hesitation. My son had called me late on a Tuesday, voice low and urgent, and said, "Mom, this is the one. This is finally it." I said yes before he finished telling me the numbers. He had needed a co-owner to satisfy the bank's equity requirement. His name alone wasn't enough. So my name went on the LLC operating agreement alongside his 40% interest, it said in the document. "A formality," he told me. "Just until we're established." I signed. That was 14 months ago. Now I was in the passenger seat of his car, being asked to let him do the introductions. The restaurant was called Sloan and Fig, my daughter-in-law's name, the first part. Her idea, he'd said, when I asked. The fig was for the tree in her grandmother's backyard in Savannah. I had smiled and said it was charming. The space was beautiful, I'll give them that. Exposed brick, warm Edison bulbs strung low over reclaimed wood tables, a chalkboard wall with the evening's menu written in careful handwriting that I suspected was printed, not drawn. The hostess station was a salvaged farmhouse door balanced on 2 sawhorses, varnished and perfect. Everything was deliberate. Everything cost something. My daughter-in-law was behind the pass when we walked in, her hair pinned up, wearing a linen apron over a silk blouse. She looked exactly the way someone looks when they've been practicing looking effortless. She turned and smiled. "Ruth," she said, coming around the counter, "you made it. How was the flight?" "Not Mom. Not even a hug." She patted my arm the way you pat a neighbor's shoulder at a church potluck. "Long," I said, "but I'm happy to be here." She nodded and turned back to my son. "The Aldrich party is already at the bar. Derek brought his wife." She lowered her voice slightly, and his accountant, my son, straightened his collar. "Perfect." He glanced at me. "You okay to find a seat for a few minutes?" "I need to go say hello." "Of course," I said. He crossed the room before I finished the sentence. I stood near the hostess stand and looked around. On the far wall, framed in matching black frames, was a gallery of photographs. My daughter-in-law's grandmother in her garden. My daughter-in-law's parents on their wedding day. A faded image of what I assumed was the original fig tree. 4 frames of Savannah and heritage and roots. Not one image of my son before he was. The man standing at a bar in a linen shirt, shaking Derek Aldrich's hand. Not one photograph from before my daughter-in-law. Not the boy who grew up in our house in Knoxville, who failed his driver's test twice and cried on my shoulder, who stood at his father's grave and held my hand so hard it hurt. A young woman in a black apron appeared beside me. "Can I bring you something from the bar? We have a cucumber gin fizz that's very popular." "Water would be fine," I said. "Thank you." She brought it, and I found a stool near the window and watched my son work the room. He was good at it, always had been. He moved from table to bar to pass with the ease of someone who had rehearsed being comfortable. He laughed at the right moments, touched shoulders briefly, leaned in close when someone spoke. My daughter-in-law orbited him, finishing his sentences, redirecting conversations, managing the whole room like a stage director standing just out of frame. At one point, Derek Aldrich looked over and noticed me. He said something to my son, and they both walked toward me. "Ruth," my son said, "this is Derek. He's one of our early investors." "One of," Derek said with a grin, extending his hand. "Pleasure. Nathan tells me you came all the way from Tennessee." "Knoxville," I said. "Born and raised? Fantastic. What's your connection to all this?" There was a pause, brief and particular. My son filled it. "Ruth believed in the project from the beginning," he said. "She's been a wonderful supporter. Family friend, really. Known her my whole life. Family friend. Known her my whole life." I watched him say it the way you watch someone walk on ice, smooth and careful, and pretending there's nothing underneath. "Well," Derek said warmly, "we need more people like you. Takes guts to back a dream." "It does," I said simply. He moved on. My son touched my arm briefly. "Thanks," he said, and followed Derek back to the bar. I sat with my water and listened to the room fill with the sound of a good opening night. I did not cry. I wasn't going to cry. I was 63 years old and I had buried a husband and raised a son alone for 11 years. Before that son married a woman from Savannah who named a restaurant after herself, and I was not going to cry in a room full of people eating $40 entrees on tables I had helped buy. Instead, I thought about the document. My copy of the LLC operating agreement was at home in Knoxville, in a fireproof box under my bed, the same box where I kept my husband's death certificate and my own will and the deed to my house. My attorney had told me to keep it safe. "My name is on it," she had said. "That means something. Don't let him tell you it doesn't." I had not let myself think about it much. I hadn't wanted to. I wanted to believe my son when he said it was a formality. I wanted to believe that love was the same as trust. But love and trust are not the same thing. I knew that now, watching him from across a beautiful room that partly belonged to me. That night, they put me in the guest room of their house, a converted garage apartment attached to the back of the property. It had its own entrance and a mini fridge stocked with sparkling water and a ceramic bowl of individually wrapped chocolates like a hotel. The towels were folded into triangles on the bathroom counter. There was a small card that said, "Welcome, guests." I sat on the edge of the bed and unpacked slowly. In the morning, the house was quiet when I came in through the side door. My son had left early for a farmer's market run. My daughter-in-law was upstairs with their daughter, my granddaughter, who was 8 years old and had my husband's eyes, and still called me Grandma Ruth in a way that made everything else temporarily bearable. "She's sleeping in," my daughter-in-law said when I stepped into the kitchen. She was dressed already, coffee in hand, phone open to what looked like a vendor invoice. She didn't look up. "There's a pod machine on the counter. The dark roast is the one on the left." "Thank you," I said. I made my coffee and sat at the island and looked at the house around me. It was decorated the way the restaurant was decorated. Coordinated, costly, curated. On the kitchen shelf, a row of cookbooks arranged by spine color. On the dining table, a low arrangement of dried cotton stems. On the hallway console, a framed map of Savannah. No photograph of my son growing up. No evidence of the years before this version of him existed. After my daughter-in-law left for a supplier meeting, I walked through the house slowly. I told myself I was just stretching my legs. My granddaughter was still asleep upstairs. I could hear the faint sound of her white noise machine. In the hallway, I passed my son's home office. The door was half open. I paused. I am not a person who goes through other people's things. I want to be clear about that. But I am a person who funded a business, and I am a person whose name is on a legal document. And when you have given that much of yourself to something, you have a right to know if it still exists. I pushed the door open. The office was tidy. My son had always been neat, another thing he got from his father. filing cabinet against the wall, labeled by year. On the desk, a leather portfolio, a monitor, a small framed photo of my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter at the beach. I went to the filing cabinet. The label on the second drawer said Business Sloan and Fig. I opened it. The operating agreement was in a folder at the front. I pulled it out and read the first page until I found what I was looking for. Member interests. My son, 60%. My name, Ruth Ann Caldwell, 40%. He had not removed me. In 14 months, through all the permits and the contractors and the soft opening and the fundraising dinners with Derek and his accountant, my son had never filed an amendment to change the ownership structure. Either he had forgotten, or he assumed I would not look, or some part of him knew that removing me required my signature, and he had simply decided it was easier to ignore. I took a photograph of the first page, then the signature page. Then I placed the folder back exactly where I found it. I walked back to the kitchen, poured the rest of my coffee down the sink, and went outside to sit on the small bench in the backyard. The Texas morning was already warm. A hummingbird found the feeder near the fence and hovered there, working furiously for something small and sweet. I watched it for a long time. I thought about what I was going to do. Not because I was angry. Anger is loud, and I have never been a loud person. I taught 8th grade English for 27 years, and I learned early that the loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful one. I thought about it the way I thought about lesson plans, methodically, beginning with what was true. What was true? My name was on that document. What was also true? My son had introduced me to his investor as a family friend. What was equally true? I had given him everything his father and I had saved, and he had built a wall of his wife's family photographs and not one of mine. I was not a family friend. I was his mother. And I was a 40% stakeholder in a business that had a wood-fired oven from Portugal and a very good opening night. That afternoon, while my son was at the restaurant and my daughter-in-law was at a meeting, my granddaughter sat at the kitchen table and drew pictures of horses. She told me about her teacher, about a girl in her class named Priya who could do a backflip, about the chapter book she was reading. She asked if I had horses in Knoxville. No horses, I said. But your grandfather had a wood shop. He could build anything. Like what? Like a rocking horse, I said. He built one for your dad when your dad was just about your age. She looked up from her drawing. I kept it, I said. It's in my garage. She thought about this. Can I have it someday? Someday, I said. It's yours. She went back to her horses. I watched her draw and thought about what I was keeping and what I was giving away and the difference between the two. That evening, there was a dinner at the restaurant. A private event, 12 guests, friends of my son and daughter-in-law from their years in Austin. I was invited, technically. My daughter-in-law had said, "We'd love you to come, if you're not too tired from yesterday," which meant, you can come if you stay quiet and don't make it about you. I went. I wore the navy blazer again. At dinner, my son gave a brief toast. He thanked his wife for her vision and her work. He thanked Derek for his early belief in the project. He thanked the kitchen team, his front-of-house manager, the ceramic artist who made the plates. He thanked the farmers whose produce was on the table. He did not thank me. When he sat down, my daughter-in-law leaned across the table toward me and said quietly, "He's just so overwhelmed tonight." "Of course," I said. Later, one of their friends asked me how I knew Nathan and Sloan. I said I was Nathan's mother. The woman blinked and looked at my son across the table with a brief expression of recalibration. "Oh," she said. "He didn't mention his mom was coming." I smiled. "Well," I said, "here I am." That night I lay in the garage apartment with the ceiling fan turning slowly overhead and made my decision. Not with anger, not with grief, just with the quiet clarity that comes after you've been patient long enough that patience turns into something else entirely. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. Deborah Hines, attorney at law. She had handled my husband's estate, helped me write my own will, and reviewed the LLC documents before I signed. She had told me then, "Your name means something here. Don't forget it." I composed a short text. "Deborah, I'm in Austin visiting my son. I need to discuss the business documents we reviewed together. Can we talk tomorrow morning? It's not an emergency, but it is important." She replied within 10 minutes. "Of course. Call me at 9. I set my phone on the nightstand, closed my eyes, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I slept well. At 9 the next morning, I walked to a coffee shop 2 blocks from my son's house and called Deborah from a corner table. She answered on the second ring. "Ruth, talk to me." I told her everything, plain and in order. The original agreement, the 40%, the fact that he had never filed an amendment, the photograph I had taken of the operating agreement, his toast at dinner. Deborah was quiet for a moment. "He's never had you sign anything to modify your ownership?" "Nothing," I said. Another pause. "Then you still hold 40% of that LLC, legally, unambiguously." She exhaled. "Ruth, I have to ask, what do you want?" I had been thinking about this since the hummingbird and the bench and my granddaughter asking about the rocking horse. "I want my ownership formally acknowledged," I said. "On paper, clearly, with no room for confusion." "Meaning?" "My granddaughter turns 8 next month," I said. "I'd like to put my interest in a trust for her." Deborah was quiet again. "You're not keeping it for yourself?" "I don't need a restaurant," I said. "I need my son to know I was never invisible." She understood. She always had. "I'll draft the paperwork today," she said. "Can you get me a clear copy of the current operating agreement?" "Already sent it to your email," I said. She laughed softly. "Of course you have. Ruth, you know he's going to push back." "I know," I said. "He may say it was always meant to be temporary." "I know that too," I said. "He may say a lot of things, but I never signed anything that changed it, and neither did he. And that's the only thing that matters." She told me she would have a draft to review by Thursday. I thanked her, paid for my coffee, and walked back to my son's house in the Texas morning sun. On my last full day there, my son came home early. My daughter-in-law had taken my granddaughter to a birthday party. The house was quiet for once, and my son found me on the back porch reading. He sat down in the chair beside me. He was still wearing his chef's coat, which meant he had come straight from the restaurant. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "I wanted to talk to you," he said. "All right," I said. He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the yard. "I know last night wasn't exactly what you were expecting. The toast, I mean." "No," I said. "I just get in my head at those things. There's so much going on. I didn't mean to." He stopped. "I appreciate everything you did. You know that." "Do I?" I asked. "Not unkindly, just honestly." He rubbed the back of his neck. "It's just complicated, Mom. The people we work with, the investors, the whole Austin food scene, there's a way things are presented. It doesn't mean what you think it means. What does it mean when your mother flies from Tennessee and you introduce her as a family friend?" He flinched. "It's not like that." "Then tell me what it's like," I said. "I'm listening." He didn't answer for a long time. A sprinkler kicked on somewhere in the neighbor's yard. My son watched the mist catch the afternoon light. "Sloane's family," he said finally. "They have a certain way. Appearances matter. Where you come from, what things look like. Her parents never really," he paused. "They never thought I was enough. I've been trying to show them, and her, that I built something real." "You did build something real," I said. "With my money, it landed the way I meant it to, direct and unembellished." He looked at me. "I know that. Do you know your name isn't the only name on that LLC?" A pause. A different kind of pause. "What?" "I looked at the operating agreement yesterday," I said. Your filing cabinet. My name is still on it. 40%. You never changed it." He went still. I watched him process it, run it back through his memory, land on the fact that no, he had never asked me to sign anything new, had never filed an amendment, had simply assumed time would handle what paperwork hadn't. "Mom, I'm not angry," I said. "I want you to hear me say that. I am not angry, but I am done being invisible. I never meant to make you invisible." "Then what did you mean?" I asked. Not sharp, not wounded. I genuinely wanted to know. He looked at his hands for a long time. "I don't know," he said finally, quietly. "I think I just wanted to be enough on my own. And you being involved reminded everyone that I wasn't." That was the most honest thing he had said to me in years. I looked at my son, grown and tired and still, underneath all the linen shirts and business language, the boy who had failed his driver's test twice and stood at his father's grave, holding my hand so hard it hurt. "You have always been enough," I said. "You just forgot who taught you that." He didn't say anything, but his jaw worked the way it did when he was holding something in. "I've asked my attorney to formalize my ownership," I said. "She's preparing the documents. When it's done, I'm putting my interest into a trust for your daughter." He looked up. "Not to punish you," I said. "Not to threaten you. The restaurant is yours and your wife's. I don't want to run a business in Austin, but I want your daughter to know someday that her grandmother built something too. That there was a woman who said yes without hesitation and wired her life savings because she believed in her son." He was quiet for a very long time. When he spoke, his voice was low. "She'll know. I'm going to make sure of it," I said. "Not through a story you tell her. Through a document with my name on it." We sat there together on the porch until the sun dropped low enough to turn everything golden. We didn't say much more. We didn't need to. Some things are said and that's enough. Some things don't need a second conversation. They just need to be true. I left the next morning before they were awake. I had called my car service the night before. My suitcase was packed and by the door. In my son's kitchen, I left two things. A small tin of the shortbread cookies I always brought him for Christmas, the ones with the lemon zest he'd loved since he was 5 years old, and a handwritten note on a piece of paper I'd found in the kitchen drawer, monogrammed with my daughter-in-law's initials, Nathan. "I came here as your mother. I'm leaving as your mother." Nothing between those two things changed that. I love you without conditions, which is different from loving you without limits. Take care of your family. Take care of your daughter. Let her know where she comes from. All of it. Love, Mom. I folded it and left it propped against the tin. At the airport, I sat with a cup of decent coffee and watched the gates. My flight wasn't for 2 hours. I didn't mind. I had a paperback in my bag and the particular piece of a person who has said exactly what needed to be said and done exactly what needed to be done and is now simply waiting for the world to catch up. Deborah sent me the draft documents 2 days after I got home. I reviewed them at my kitchen table with my reading glasses and a cup of tea and made 2 small corrections. Then I signed. The trust was established the following Friday. My granddaughter was the sole beneficiary, with provisions for management until she turned 25. Her father was named trustee, which I had decided deliberately. I wanted him to have to look at that document every year, not as punishment, as a reminder. 3 weeks later, my son called. I let it ring once before answering. "Hi, Mom." His voice was careful, not cold, not warm. "The documents came," he said. "I know," I said. "You put my daughter in the trust." "Yes, not yourself." "No," he exhaled. "Sloan thinks I need to talk to a lawyer. That's her right," I said. "I don't think I want to," he said quietly. I waited. "I think," he said slowly, "I think I know what it means. What you did, what it cost you. A pause. What I cost you. All right, I said. I'm sorry, he said. For the introduction. For the toast. For... He stopped. For a lot of things I didn't say when I should have. I looked out my kitchen window at the backyard where my husband had built a garden bed the summer before he died. The raised beds were still there, still growing, tomatoes this year, and the small yellow roses he had planted along the fence. I know you are, I said. I'm not keeping a ledger, Nathan. I just needed you to know that I was here, that I have always been here. That's all I wanted. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, Lily asked about the rocking horse. I smiled. I know. I'll bring it at Christmas. She'd like that. Another pause. I'd like that. We talked for a little while after that. Not about the restaurant or the documents or any of it. About Lily's chapter books. About a leak in my garage roof I needed to fix. About the last weekend in October when the weather in Austin finally turns cool enough to eat outside. He said they were thinking of doing a special harvest menu. He asked if I would come. I said I would think about it. After we hung up, I sat for a long time in the quiet of my kitchen. The afternoon light came through the window at the angle it always does in October, low and amber and unhurried. My tea had gone cold. I didn't make more. I just sat with the feeling of things being, if not fixed, then at least honest. That's different from fixed. Honest means both people can see what's true. Fixed means the problem goes away. I have lived long enough to know that some things don't go away. They settle. They change shape. They become something you can carry. My name is on a trust document that will one day belong to my granddaughter. When she is old enough, she will read it and she will find my name there, plain and legal and real. Ruth Ann Caldwell, grantor. And maybe she will ask her father about it, and maybe her father will tell her the truth, the whole truth, the part about where the money came from and what it meant, and who said yes before anyone else believed. Or maybe she'll just know because she'll have always known, the way children know things, quietly, in the part of themselves that doesn't need documents to keep the truth. I got up, washed my cup, dried it, and put it back where it belonged. Then, I went outside to check on the roses. They were doing fine. They always do. They grow whether or not anyone is watching, which is something I have always liked about them. If this story stayed with you, share it. There's someone out there who needs to remember that being quiet is not the same as disappearing, and being still is not the same as giving up.